On today's show, a true emergency podcast on the day before the draft. Kristaps Porzingis is coming to the Atlanta Hawks. We'll get into how this happened, what's going to happen in the future, and much more coming up.
You are Locked On Hawks, your daily Atlanta Hawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 2006 of the Locked On Hawks podcast. I am your host, Rowland, coming to you on a Tuesday evening in true emergency fashion. And I want to encourage you at the top of the show, as I always do, to make Locked On Hawks your first listen each and every day. Check us out and subscribe to this podcast anywhere you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Overcast. We're also on YouTube. So please like this video. Once again, please subscribe and tell your friends about the show. And a peek behind the curtain a little bit here. I was going to do an episode late tonight, no matter what, with the latest intel, any rumblings, and especially lots of NBA draft coverage, because the draft is literally 24 hours from right now as I'm recording this podcast. But then as the day was transpiring on Tuesday, I was getting rumblings. I'll talk about later on. There was some Terance Mann buzz throughout the day. Then there was a little bit of a ripple behind the scenes about Kristaps Porzingis. Some reporting from Jake Fisher and Mark Stein about the Hawks being a potential target of Boston and Porzingis and all of those things. And then pretty quickly, this all happened to where the Hawks now have the mythical 7-footer that everyone's been asking for a very long time. I say that kind of tongue-in-cheek, but also a really interesting, talented, theoretical fit, the rare player in Porzingis that is the guy who can actually protect the rim as a true center-sized player and also spread the floor as a high-end shooter for a center. Everyone wants that kind of player. He is that kind of player when he is healthy, and that is a big caveat when he is healthy. But we'll get into the angles of the trade in emergency fashion, and then I will have a second podcast later on tonight about the draft and the fallout there. So, PSA, the Hawks still have a 13th pick in the draft. That still matters. Center is no longer, for me, it was never a huge priority anyway in the draft, but now it's probably not a huge priority in the draft no matter what. We'll get into all that later on. But for now, this is going to be a podcast about the trade and the fallout of the trade. The deal is as follows from the Hawks side. This is what matters. This is the Hawks podcast. The Hawks are sending out Terance Mann, Georges Niang, and the number 22 pick in the draft on Wednesday. Their second of their first-round picks. That was the Lakers pick from the DeJounte Murray trade. The Hawks are getting Porzingis from Boston, and it's been reported that there is a second-round pick coming to Atlanta. Now, I didn't want to wait only for this. I am monitoring my phone as I'm talking to you. I have not heard yet that what pick that is. There's a pretty wide range. It could be coming from Boston or Brooklyn, so that's a bit of a challenge. It's a 3-team deal with Boston and Brooklyn, with Mann going to Brooklyn, Niang going to Boston, and we don't know what that pick is going to be. So generally, when a second-round pick is thrown into a deal and we don't have the info on it, I would keep my expectations fairly low for that pick, but maybe I'll be surprised. We'll see. But in the meantime, just know that I'm recording this as fast as I possibly can. That's why I don't know. But it will be a second-round pick of some kind coming alongside, obviously, the headliner of the deal in Porzingis. So for me, big picture, this is kind of a twofold deal for the Hawks. Clearly, the headliner is adding the best player in the deal by a wide margin, and a player in Porzingis who just averaged 19.8 points and 7 rebounds per game across 2 seasons with Boston, one of which ended up in a title. I know he was kind of hurt for a lot of that playoff run, but he was really unlocking them when he was playing 2 years ago. As I said before, I'll say it again now, maybe one more time later on. He is that very rare big man who can both protect the rim defensively and also space the floor on offense. Overall, Porzingis is a very good player. I will admit, there have been times in his career, as I covered not just the Hawks, but the whole league, writing for Dime or writing for Fansided or wherever I was writing at the time, I've been a little lower on Porzingis at times than some people have been. I don't think he was ever like the star player that people sometimes thought that he might be, but he doesn't have to be that anymore. He's almost 30. I think that the star upside might be a little bit gone for Porzingis at this point in time. He'll be 30 in August, but he is a very, very good player when he is healthy. Now, there is some risk. He has a long history of injury issues. That is not something you can ignore. I think the Hawks certainly will be acknowledging that when they make this deal official. And as of right now on Tuesday evening, it's not official yet, not been announced. It is happening. I've confirmed it. It's happening. But that's the big thing here. That's part of why he was available. The other big part, look, there's been a lot of things that have happened in the last couple of months that have kind of changed things in the Eastern Conference. One of them is Jason Tatum tearing his Achilles. And that injury led to Boston being in cost-cutting mode even more than they might have been before. They've already traded Drew Holiday. Now they've traded Porzingis. He was much more available for a deal like this than he would have been if they had Tatum available. But for Boston, it's not a Boston podcast, but they wanted to cut money. That was the biggest thing here, and they were able to do that. They got Porzingis off their books, and all they had to bring in was Georges Niang. And Georges Niang is not making nearly what Porzingis is making. So that's very interesting as far as the money stuff is concerned. They're going to save a ton of money. But there was a mystery illness this year for Porzingis. He came back, but was like very clearly not well. And when I say mystery, there actually is a mystery. We don't know, and he doesn't know what his injury was. He actually sent a social media post out earlier today that I actually found after the trade where he was expressing he's been feeling good. He's ready to play with the national team this summer. That's all good. That's a good sign. But it's just worth keeping in mind that one of the reasons why the price is what it is that Porzingis is not the most durable player. That is the one risk of this deal, if there is any risk. But look, he potentially unlocks a ton for the Hawks. The upside of the Hawks is so much higher right now than it was 24 hours ago. That matters a lot. Even if some of the downside risk of these sort of being able to be out there, durability is part of this. Now, as far as how they got here, I shared a screenshot on Twitter tonight of a text that I sent to someone earlier on. I took out their information, just showed the one text I sent, and basically was saying that I was hearing that Terance Mann was being kind of shopped around the league. And from what I understand, especially now, like that was the case. Not about Terance, but as I've said literally yesterday on the show, I said this. The only contract on the Hawks books that was, in my mind, anywhere near being underwater or negative was Terance Mann. He's owed $15.5 million for 3 more seasons. And he's not a bad player. He's actually a good player. He's a rotation player. But if you poll the league, that was a negative value contract, which is why the Hawks were trying to, get off that contract from what I heard. Now, I actually know from people that I talked to from 2 different teams today. Doesn't really matter now. But they actually had direct talks about Mann in the last couple of days. So this is not just a Boston thing with Mann. The Hawks were trying to get off Terance Mann. That's pretty clear. Now, this was the biggest swing deal that I heard of. A lot of the other ones were like more practical, like maybe Mann and a second-round pick or something like that. This is a bigger swing, but, it was clear they were trying to get off Mann and 3-year contract. Now, by the way, there's a combo to be had at some point about how much I did not like that trade in February, the Bogey trade. Everyone focused on the Hunter trade back then, and I got why. But I said that night, 4 months ago, that I didn't like the Bogey Mann trade. I did not understand why they sent 3 picks to get Mann for Bogey. And unfortunately, the Hawks basically paid for Mann on the way in and then paid to get off Mann on the way out. That's not great, but it did work out reasonably well here in that they were able to use that salary matching to make this deal happen. So that's where I want to go next. The Hawks are sending out the 22nd pick in this deal. That is the big asset that they are sending out for Porzingis. So if you want to think about it as 22 for Porzingis, it's not exactly that, but it's kind of that. I think Niang is like a neutral value on that deal. Maybe actually slightly positive. It's an expiring contract. He's a pretty good player. It's a modest deal, like $8 million. But Mann is there for the money, and Mann's a negative contract. So basically what happened here, in my opinion, the Hawks are sending the 22nd pick in the draft to both entice to get Porzingis, but also to get off of Mann. It's like 50-50 in there. Like you're paying to get off Mann and also paying to get Porzingis. This doesn't matter now. But basically what I would say is if Porzingis made exactly what the trade exception the Hawks have is, which is $25 million, and they traded a first-round pick just for Porzingis, I actually would like that less than I do this. I like it more because you're also getting off of Mann's contract. There's a dual incentive here, and that's where I'll leave it for now. Porzingis is making $30.7 million on an expiring deal. Only 1 year left for Porzingis, and it's this coming season it's about to happen. When he is healthy, big when, big if, whatever you want to say that, he is definitely worth that contract when he is healthy. Now, he's probably worth more than that, honestly, when he's healthy. He's probably a $35 million player, $30 million player. He's really good when he's healthy. The problem is that, of course, Boston's trying to save money, and you can't assume health with Porzingis. So if you want to take the deal into account, they were not going to be able to trade him for 3 picks or whatever. Like they were not going to get more than a pick like this for Porzingis because of the expiring contract, the amount of money he makes, and the durability issues. But again, the Hawks are getting kind of a 2-for-1 here by getting off of Mann and adding Porzingis. And one more time, the Hawks did not use the trade exception I'll come back to that later on in the podcast. They did not use that, so they still have it. Keep that in mind. There was some misunderstanding there. So overall, I'll just say this. Overall, I really like this move. Now, I am not always the pom-pom waiver. If you remember back in February, I really, really did not like the Mann Bogey trade. I was okay with the Hunter trade. I didn't love it. This deal is better than those deals. This is like a B+, A- kind of trade for me. It isn't an A+ for me because of the durability issues. There is some risk to it. You're giving up a first-round pick. It's real value that you traded to make this deal happen. And the downside is that he gets hurt and doesn't help you at all, and you kind of lit a pick on fire. But it wasn't the 5th pick. It's the 22nd pick. That does matter too. But I think that Porzingis, when he is going to be available, hopefully a lot, is going to really help the team. He'll be good. He unlocks a lot of things, the shooting, the defense. Crucially, he can play with Okongwu. That was kind of the white whale in backup center or center talk recently, is that ideally, if you were going to pay up for a high-level center, you get a guy that would be able to play with or without Okongwu. Porzingis can do that. That's a theory of this trade. I'm not saying you start those guys together or that you have to play them together a ton, but if you want to tell me they can play 8 or 10 minutes a game together, I fully believe that because of Porzingis' shooting and Okongwu's versatility defensively on the perimeter. His shooting has improved. That is now a real option to kind of go big and bludgeon teams with size. That's actually a really good look there. And even when they're not playing together, it's a ceiling raiser for the Hawks. He's a really good player. I like Niang. I really do. I like Terance Mann. I've heard nothing but good things about him. I've had a good time covering those guys recent days, but I think it's a good deal for the Hawks. They add the best talent by far in this trade, and they do it, crucially, without overpaying a ton and without taking an unnecessary long-term risk. If this blows up on you, if he gets hurt or he's still sick or whatever happens, the downside is not that low. And that's another reason why I really like this deal. And again, the upside is considerably high. They have more work to do. I promise you they have a lot more work to do to this roster. They're now actually a little bit less deep than they were a few minutes ago because they went 2 for 1 here and they already had depth problems. We'll get into all that and more, but I want to say one more time, the ceiling is really much higher now than it was before. I like the deal a lot for the Hawks, and I think you got to be pretty pleased with the first transaction of the Auntie Soleil era as the general manager of Atlanta. So I mentioned before they have more work to do. We'll get to that and much more after a word from our partners. Today's show is brought to you by Monarch Money. We've all done this in the past, I'm sure, but at times I look at my bank account, wonder where actually all my money happens to go between dining out and online shopping and entertainment. It's easy to lose track sometimes. That's where Monarch Money comes in for you. Monarch Money is your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control of your finances. And at Monarch Money, they're not just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can actually track all of your accounts, your investments, and your spending in one place. You can stop just managing your money and start building wealth instead. When I started using Monarch, I was actually spending a ton of money on little things like food or whatever else in my life. Just one example, but now I budget smarter and I save more all the time with Monarch Money. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can actually use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan your long-term goals all in one place. If you want to manage your money in conjunction with your partner, that can be smoother than ever as well. You can track shared accounts and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without any of the stress. Take control of your finances right now with Monarch Money and use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. The code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Today's show is brought to you by Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table potentially. Think about the last time you actually had an urgent need in your own life, perhaps for a plumber or a service provider. If the first person you called didn't answer, did you wait? You probably didn't. You probably moved on, and that's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system, and it's built to streamline customer communications all from one app on your phone or your computer. Open Phone also lets you manage your business calls and texts from a single app. And they have the shared inbox feature that's awesome. It's a game changer for you and your whole team. Jump into one conversation instantly without missing a beat. OpenPhone's AI agent also can handle your calls after hours, answer common questions, and capture any leads so that you never miss a customer. At OpenPhone, they're also offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/lockedonnba. That is OPENPHONE, openphone.com/lockedonnba. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will also port them over for you at no extra charge. One more time, it's openphone.com/lockedonnba. OpenPhone, no missed calls, no missed customers. All right, so there is a financial element to all of what's going on here. And I got into some of that already with Porzingis' money, $30.7 million. The Hawks actually added money for this season. Now, they subtracted money for future years because Porzingis could still be here, but he's not signed beyond this season. Maybe there'll be an extension talk. I don't know what's going to happen there. I would probably lean to no on that, but we'll see. They say future money, but they take on more money now. So Porzingis is like $3.7 million. Mann is 15.5 for this year and 2 more, and then Niang makes about 8.2. They're adding about $7 million in salary. They do lose the cap hold, which is like $3+ million for the 22nd pick, which matters. They have 11 players under contract right now on their books. If you include the 13th pick, Vit Krejci, who's non-guaranteed, who they're going to keep, and then Dom Barlow is a team option. They could certainly cut Dom, but they have to replace him with somebody anyway who makes the same amount of money, so it's kind of the same thing. They're roughly at about $159 million right now. The tax line is roughly 188. So they got like $29 million under the tax line. That's a very rough figure. Keep that in mind. But they still have a lot of work to do. As a reminder, that figure I just told you has $0 for Caris LeVert, who they do want to keep, and they honestly quite a bit need right now, unless they add somebody else. Doesn't include him at all. They still have multiple ways to get better. They had the trade exception. They didn't use it here. So if they want to use it up to $25 million, they can do that. It could be a $17 million player, whatever. That's still an option that they can use. People were misunderstanding that. Porzingis just makes too much money. He didn't fit in that exception, so they still have it. Brooklyn got involved, all that stuff. And again, Mann's going to Brooklyn, Niang to Boston. They have the trade exception. They still have the mid-level exception as well if they wanted to sign a free agent to a player. The trade exception is just a trade. It has to be a trade. The mid-level can be a free agent signing. That's a possibility. And then also, again, they have the bird rights on Caris LeVert. So they have plenty of flexibility. They do still have interest in Caris LeVert. I've been saying for a while that I project him to resign. Not definitely. That's the most likely outcome, I think, but we'll see. But they have less depth. They went 2 for 1 here. Obviously, you do the deal every time as far as upside is concerned. But just to put it plainly, they currently have 1 backup wing on the roster. It's Vit Krejci. 1. They have starters. They have Dyson. They have Zach. Even Jalen was more of a 4, but still. But they only have 1, count them 1, backup wing right now. Now, if they add LeVert, that is now 2. But they had Mann, who's a durable player who can play a lot of minutes for you, not on the roster anymore. So that's now a genuine need area, is backup wing. They have to have someone like that, if not 2, honestly. And also, they do have a shooting question. Now, Porzingis really helps the shooting when he's available. But losing Niang, who's really durable as well, was their best shooter last year. That's a question mark. And backup power forward at the moment is quite literally Mo Gay, and only Mo Gay. They have Don Barlow on the team option. You got Jalen can play there. Obviously, who's going to start there. But Okongwu might play a little bit of 4 with Porzingis, maybe, but they have to add somebody at the forward line. So roster needs, you still have some backup point guard uncertainty. You got Bufkin on the team, but backup point guard is still uncertain. Backup wing is uncertain, and if they don't bring back LeVert, it becomes a giant red light flashing. And then backup power forward is just Mo, and Mo isn't the most durable guy in the world, and you want to have other options there. So depth-wise, they don't have a ton of it. They have the starting 5, whether it includes Porzingis or Okongwu, and then they have the other one of those guys. And then you got, Vit Krejci, who can play for you, and after that, it gets pretty shallow. You've got Kobe Bufkin, and they got work to do. 13th pick, as I'll get into even more later on tonight, you can't bank on a rookie to play great big minutes for you. They might have to play that guy some. They do have, again, they have ways to improve the roster, add to the roster, whether it be bringing LeVert back, using the mid-level, using the minimum exception, using the biannual exception. They have stuff, but they do have a lot more work to do. I'll leave it there. We'll get into that much more often in the next few days. Last thing before I sign off, and I promise I will get to the draft on episode 2 later on tonight. That's now been shaken up as well, obviously, the 13th pick. So what are they getting out of Porzingis? Just quickly here, if you don't follow the whole league, only follow the Hawks. Porzingis is a pretty famous player, but 7-footer, can shoot it. And when I say can shoot it, can really shoot it especially for a center, but really for anybody. A 39% three-point shooter the last 2 years in Boston, career like 37%, a real shooter, not just a center shooter, like an actual big-time shooter. He's improved his scoring inside the arc a lot in Boston the last couple of years. Not like a dominant post scorer. I know that people are going to see how tall he is, and he's 7'2", 7'3", and assume inside. No, it's not. He's not a great inside scorer. He can do that more than he used to be able to, but that's not really his game. He's a floor spacer first on offense, good free throw shooter, all those things. Also played in a system in Boston that was obviously like fine-tuned and got to the line less there than he was before. Rebounding wise, actually he's pretty below average for a center, to be sure. He'll be helped by Jalen, I would imagine. Jalen is a great power forward rebounder. That really helps. Keep that in mind on Porzingis. There's kind of a stylistic question. Not a bad thing, but like he tends to kind of have trouble playing fast. He's a very big, lumbering man. And I think the Hawks like to play really fast. That'll be an adjustment for him, I think. I think defensively, he isn't great, but he isn't bad. I think he's never been great. I think he took a little bit of a step back last year, maybe because of the health. Like, you don't want to assume that. But he's done a good job. The metrics kind of like him in this modern era of defense. He's not a bad defender. Like, he's got, obviously, just the length itself, the size really helps. Again, rebounding-wise, kind of shaky. Not an elite rim protector, but a good enough one. Not a concern for me, which is really nice to add a guy who can shoot and not be a bad defender. That's a really good thing. And look, to me, he isn't going to play huge minutes. And when I say about that, like I say this point all the time, including over the weekend with Tower Jones on the podcast. Most teams have two centers that play in the 20s as far as minutes are concerned. If you have an elite guy, a Jokic, Şengün, Sabonis, like there are guys that play 34 minutes a game. Most teams don't do that. And the Hawks, I think, given Porzingis' age and durability, you're going to see what he kind of did in Boston, or maybe even less. He averaged about 28 minutes a game this year in Boston. Similarly, they had Al Horford. Now, Al Horford and Okongwu were a little bit different, but similar in some ways. They had Luke Cornett as well. I could see a scenario, and again, this is super early without any announcements or anything from Quinn, where they play a little bit together every game, 8 minutes, whatever it's going to be, 6 minutes, and then split the rest of the minutes at center when he's healthy. And that gets them both into that like 28-minute a game range. Again, I have no interest in talking about who's going to start on June 24th. That's not a big deal to me at all. But they can both play. They can play together. And Porzingis on this team does not need to be relied on to play huge, huge minutes because Okongwu is really good as a second center for sure. So 1A, 1B, however you want to put that, really, really good player, and they fit together. That is massive to both manage the workload of Porzingis and also just maximize what you are going to get out of him when he's healthy. So one more time, I really like this deal. I really do. You're not paying a premium for him. You're adding a very, very good player. You're doing it without big-time long-term risk because it's only a one-year deal. You're wielding some of that. Honestly, it's that optionality word that was funny that Ansi was sharing on Monday if you listen to my podcast or any other content from the press conference. This is part of that. They had optionality. They had matching salary. They had picks to trade, flexibility, optionality. How do you want to put that? This is that in action. This is what Ansi said in action. You had optionality. I mentioned this literally 24 hours ago about how they don't really have any bad contracts, and the one they do is Mans, and it wasn't some terrible deal. It's not an albatross deal. And they were able to get off of that, package it with George, and get a really, really good high upside player for a relatively good price. So I mentioned it a lot. I poke fun at it, the optionality thing, but that really was what happened here. They added optionality. And look, there's a scenario where Porzingis is just not healthy, and that's frustrating to everybody. I do think they're going to need a third center, whether it's Larry Nance or something like that. Like Porzingis' health, you can't go into the season with Don Barlow as your third center, in my opinion. You have to add somebody else. But again, you'll take the risk because he is that good when he's playing. But the ceiling, if he can play like 60 games, is really worth it. Like he's a really good player. Fill out the rest of the roster, and I think Hawks fans should be excited about this addition. All right, one more time. The plan was for me to run down a lot of draft stuff on this podcast. I'm still going to do that on a second episode later on. I need some time to reshuffle some of my thoughts on that with only one pick now and with a center in place already. And a lot of things have changed. My framing, the mock drafts will all have changed. I was going to do a mock draft roundup. That's kind of outdated now. So I'm going to reset in a few hours. I'll have more. If there's more news, more rumblings, more rumors, I'll touch on that. But I want to get this to you as fast as humanly possible. So here it is. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Please subscribe. If you are new to the podcast, finding the show for the first time, I appreciate you being here. We cover the Hawks every day of the year on this show. Literally every day of the year. Just past 2,000 episodes. Been doing this for a long time. I'm in the building, talking to people. I was at Ansi's press conference yesterday, the GM of the Hawks. I will be plugged in. I'll be in Vegas for Summer League. I'll be at the draft stuff tomorrow night at State Farm Arena. We're covering the team. I've been covering the team for a long time. Hop on board. Subscribe. Tell your friends. Follow us on Twitter/X at Locked On Hawks. Follow me there at BT Rowland. Follow my Blue Sky at BT Rowland. I'm also on my non-podcast work about the Hawks is at patreon.com/BT Rowland. All right, everybody. One more time, please subscribe to the podcast. I appreciate you listening, and we'll see you all next time.